Kathy, a 33-year-old freelance web designer, had always relished the freedom of working from home. She could manage her workload at her own pace, balancing both personal and professional life without interference. Her spacious house, inherited from her late uncle, had become her sanctuary, the place where she could truly be herself. But everything changed one afternoon when Kathy was deep into her work, her laptop screen filled with lines of code and design ideas. The doorbell rang, and within minutes, her parents, Linda and Robert Matthews, had entered the house. Kathy barely had time to greet them before they started inspecting every corner of the room. "This house really is big," her mother mused aloud. "Seems like we could live here too." Kathy's father, nodding in agreement, added, "That's right. It seems there's even a spare room. Besides, it's a waste for Kathy to live in such a good house all by herself." Kathy's heart sank. She knew where this conversation was headed. Ignoring Kathy's presence, her parents began discussing the details of moving in without even asking her opinion. "We're moving in this weekend," her father declared with finality. "This house is just too good to be left unused." Kathy's frustration boiled over. "Wait a minute," she interjected, feeling her voice rise. "I have no intention of living with you guys."
"What are you talking about?"
Her father's face reddened, anger seeping into his words. "This house was taken over by you. You wanted it from your uncle, trying to make it yours, didn't you?" "That's not true," Kathy snapped, standing her ground. "I simply had a conversation with Uncle. He gave it to me because he trusted me, and it's under his name for now." But her father wasn't done. "Don't make excuses. Our house is falling apart. Your mother and I are moving in, whether you like it or not." Kathy's heart felt like it was being squeezed. Her parents had sold their own house, leaving them with nowhere to go. And despite her resistance, Kathy knew she couldn't just turn them away. Reluctantly, she agreed to let them move in, but she had no idea the emotional toll it would take on her. The first few days of her parents living with her were filled with thinly veiled criticisms and snide remarks. It was as though they had become experts in pointing out every little flaw in Kathy's life. "Hey Kathy, you're over 30 now, aren't you?" her mother asked one evening, casting a sideways glance at her. "Don't you think it's time to settle down and get married?" Kathy sighed, trying to focus on her work, but the tension was thick in the air. "I'm enjoying my work right now. No plans for marriage." Her mother raised an eyebrow. "Keep talking like that and you'll never get married. Why don't you learn something from your sisters?" Kathy's blood began to simmer. "My sister's marriage isn't exactly a fairy tale, is it?" Her mother instantly jumped in, her voice sharp. "Don't badmouth your sister like that. Unlike you, she's married and even has a job at a company." Kathy's frustration reached a boiling point. "I may not be married, but I'm doing a decent job too." "All you do is sit in front of your computer," her father chimed in. "You're probably making money through shady means, aren't you?" "Shady means?" Kathy couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I make a living through legitimate work. No need to worry about me." Her father's face contorted with anger. "How dare you talk back to your mother? You're the complete opposite of your sister. She's a successful woman, and you're just wasting your time." Kathy felt a pang in her chest. It wasn't just the words that stung. It was the truth behind them. The truth that her parents had never fully supported her choices, her lifestyle, or her career. All they could see was her sister's seemingly perfect life, and Kathy couldn't help but feel the weight of their disappointment. The constant criticisms, the constant comparisons, all began to break Kathy's spirit. Every day felt like a battle, not just with her parents, but with her own sense of self-worth. No matter what she did, it never seemed good enough. And the worst part? Her parents didn't even seem to care. One evening, as Kathy sat at her desk, trying to focus on a project, her sister, who had been living across town, called. Kathy knew she had to brace herself for yet another round of advice from someone who, much like their parents, seemed to think she wasn't living up to her potential. "Hey, Kathy," her sister began, her voice laced with concern. "Mom and Dad have been talking about you a lot. They're worried." "Worried about what?" Kathy shot back, her frustration evident. "They think you're not doing enough with your life. That you're wasting time with this freelancing thing." Kathy stared at the computer screen, her fingers frozen on the keyboard. Tell them I'm doing just fine. But deep down, Kathy knew things weren't fine. She was tired. Tired of the comparisons, tired of being made to feel like she was falling short. And as her sister's voice continued on the other end of the line, Kathy realized one thing. If she was going to reclaim her life, she had to take matters into her own hands. No more letting them control her decisions. No more giving in to their opinions. It was time to fight back. Despite all the tensions, Kathy's parents continued their subtle but relentless comparisons between her and her sister, Sandy. Kathy's sister worked for a company, but her job was just a temporary office position, nothing special. Kathy, on the other hand, earned more than Sandy by working from home as a freelance web designer. Kathy understood that people from her parents' generation didn't quite grasp the concept of remote work, but the constant belittling stung. It felt as if no matter how much she succeeded, it was never enough for them. Her accomplishments were never celebrated the way her sisters were, even if Sandy's life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. One evening, as Kathy prepared dinner, she was caught off guard when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. To her surprise, it was Sandy, burdened with a huge amount of luggage. "Kathy, long time no see," Sandy greeted her, looking stressed but determined. Kathy stared in disbelief. "What's going on? A large house like this. If Uncle was going to give it to someone, he should have given it to me." Sandy, with a somber tone, explained, "I got divorced, so I'll be living here from today. Didn't Mom and Dad tell you?" Kathy was left speechless. "What? You're living here? I didn't hear anything about this." Ignoring Kathy's shock, Sandy marched upstairs, immediately claiming an empty room as her own. Kathy could do nothing but watch, her heart sinking deeper. The once peaceful home had now become a place of constant upheaval. Kathy had always felt like the black sheep in the family, but her sister's arrival only amplified the strain. Sandy had quit her job after her divorce and spent her days gossiping and complaining about Kathy with their mother. One day, as Kathy prepared dinner, she overheard their conversation. "Hey Mom, isn't this dress cute?" Sandy asked, holding up a new outfit. "Oh yes, Sandy. You're so pretty. It will definitely suit you," her mother replied. "Do you think so too? It's totally not something Kathy would wear, right?" Kathy felt a pang of hurt. "Well, Kathy is a bit plain. That's why she can't get hired anywhere. All she does is play online at home," their mother added casually. Kathy could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Mom, you can't just say that," she protested, but her mother didn't seem to care. Kathy remained silent, biting her tongue. She wanted to fight back, but she knew that doing so would only give them the satisfaction of seeing her react. So, she continued to endure their hurtful remarks in silence, growing more and more frustrated with each passing day. One day, as Kathy was feeling particularly overwhelmed by her family's constant judgment, she received a phone call from a friend. Her friend's dog had recently had a litter of puppies, and one little black chihuahua had caught Kathy's eye. "I've always wanted a chihuahua," Kathy thought to herself. "It will be my little companion." The puppy, which she named Muffin, was the sweetest thing Kathy had ever seen. With his round eyes and wagging tail, he brought Kathy a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. "I'm going to adopt him," Kathy decided. "Muffin, you're coming home with me?" But Kathy didn't consult with her parents or Sandy about her decision. After all, this was her house, and she was the one who would bear the expenses for Muffin's care. When she brought the little chihuahua home, however, the reaction from her parents and Sandy was as expected. "We didn't hear anything about you getting a dog," her mother grumbled. "Exactly," Sandy added. "Dogs smell, don't they? I hate odors." Kathy rolled her eyes, but didn't let their comments bother her. Muffin was her choice, and she wasn't going to let them ruin the joy he brought her. As soon as Kathy walked through the door with Muffin in her arms, her parents and Sandy began their complaints. "Kathy, how could you just bring a dog home without consulting us?" her mother demanded, her voice filled with irritation. "We didn't approve of this." Sandy crossed her arms, looking equally displeased. "You didn't even ask. What were you thinking?" Kathy, fed up with their constant interference, stood her ground. Firstly, I didn't pick him up off the street. A friend gave him to me, she said firmly. And secondly, I'm the one who's going to bear all the expenses for Muffin, so there shouldn't be any issue. What I choose to keep in my house is my business, and if you have any complaints, you're free to leave. Her parents were stunned into silence for a moment. Their faces flushed with anger, but Kathy didn't back down. She wasn't going to let them dictate her life any longer. After a tense silence, something unexpected happened. Within a few hours, Kathy noticed a dramatic shift. The very same people who had criticized her were now swooning over Muffin. "Aren't you cute, little one?" her mother cooed, her earlier anger forgotten. "Are you mommy's boy or daddy's or maybe your sis's?" Sandy, who had been furious just moments ago, bent down to pet the chihuahua. "Look at those eyes. So adorable," she exclaimed. Kathy blinked in disbelief. Just a moment ago, they had been furious, but now they were fawning over the puppy as if nothing had ever happened. It was as though the anger had evaporated, replaced by an almost obsessive fascination with the tiny dog. Kathy stood back, her arms crossed. "Well, looks like I've found the one thing that can make you all shut up and stop criticizing me," she muttered under her breath. From that moment on, Muffin became the center of attention. The family's hostility towards Kathy had miraculously faded, replaced by a shared infatuation with the chihuahua. It was an odd turn of events, but Kathy wasn't about to complain. She was finally able to live in relative peace, and for the first time in a long while, her home felt like a sanctuary again. However, the calm didn't last long. One day, while Kathy was out running errands, she received an urgent call from her sister. "Kathy, come back home now." Sandy's voice was sharp, tinged with fury. Kathy's heart skipped a beat. "What happened? What's going on?" Sandy's voice grew louder, her anger palpable. "It's not what happened, it's what Muffin did. He did his business on my clothes. What if they smell now?" Kathy's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "What?" "Just wash them quickly, and it'll be fine. And honestly, isn't it your fault for leaving your clothes all over the floors?" Sandy was not having it. "What? My fault? It's your poor training that's to blame." Kathy sighed, trying to stay calm. "Enough, Sandy. Muffin is still a puppy. If you take him out for walks, he won't do his business in the house. You even said you were excited to take him for a walk today. Did you actually do it?" Sandy hesitated for a moment before muttering, "Well, I was going to take him later." Kathy shook her head, exasperated. "Then don't blame Muffin for your lack of follow-through. If you'd taken him out when you said you would, this wouldn't have happened." But Sandy wasn't ready to let it go. "Well, I'm still charging you for the cleaning costs," she snapped. Kathy rolled her eyes, but when she returned home, she found that things had escalated. Both her parents had been informed of the incident and were glaring at her, standing beside Sandy, who looked more enraged than ever. Without warning, Sandy threw the soiled clothes at Kathy. "Clean these," she shouted, her voice filled with bitterness. "And you're paying for the cleaning, too." Kathy's patience was running thin. It was as if nothing she did was ever good enough. But now, she had Muffin, a small comfort in her otherwise chaotic life. And she wasn't going to let her family ruin that for her. The tension in the house was unbearable. Kathy could barely believe what was happening as Sandy continued to lash out at her. "Why can't you take responsibility? It's because you didn't take him for a walk and left your clothes thrown on the floor." Sandy screamed, her face red with anger. "Shut up. Don't talk back to me." Sandy snapped. "It's because you brought this stupid dog home that this happened. What are you going to do about it, huh?" Kathy's heart was pounding, but she kept her cool. She couldn't believe how unreasonable her family was. "Stupid dog," Kathy said, her voice trembling with frustration. "You were the one who didn't take him for a walk. How is that my fault? And it's harsh to call him a stupid dog just because he had a little accident." Sandy wasn't listening. "It's because of your poor training," she insisted. "You're the one who should take responsibility." Kathy couldn't take it anymore. "Why can't any of you think beyond your own convenience?" she snapped. "You're only thinking about how this affects you. You can't even forgive a puppy for making a mistake. Her parents, who had been silently watching the argument, finally spoke up. Kathy, shouldn't you at least apologize to Sandy? Her mother asked, her tone accusing. This all happened because of that dog you brought home. Kathy's blood began to boil. Can both of you just give it a rest already? Puppies are like babies. They make mistakes. Can't you forgive him just once? But her mother wasn't listening. Pathetic. This situation only happened because of this stupid dog, she muttered under her breath. Kathy, you made the right choice not getting married. If you became a mother, I doubt you'd raise a decent child. Kathy's jaw clenched. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. How dare you say something like that, she spat. If you took him for walks properly and kept the house tidy, none of this would have happened. And then it came, the final blow. Sandy pointed her finger at Kathy, with a smug look on her face. I can't take it anymore. I don't need you, or this dumb dog. Get out of this house. Kathy's eyes widened in disbelief. What? What do you mean, get out? She asked, her voice shaking. I said, get out. Sandy repeated, her voice harsh. We don't need a home-working freeloader here. A home-working freeloader. The word stung like a slap across the face. Kathy had been providing for this household, paying for everything. How could they say that to her? She was the one holding everything together. As her parents echoed Sandy's words, repeating get out in unison, Kathy's anger reached a boiling point. She had tried for years to make things work with her family, but this was it. She was done. Kathy's vision blurred with fury, but a dark sense of satisfaction started to bubble up inside her. If this is how they're going to treat me, then so be it. She didn't respond to their taunts. Instead, she grabbed her belongings, packed her things, and, without a word, walked out of the house with Muffin in her arms. The moment she stepped out of the door, a part of her felt like a weight had been lifted. No more criticism. No more belittling. She was free. But her sister's voice echoed in the distance. This is all your fault, you know. Sandy shouted from behind her. If you'd just listened to me, none of this would have happened. Kathy didn't look back. Her heart was racing, but she knew she had made the right decision. They still don't understand their situation, she thought. Hell awaits them, but I won't be around to witness it. Suppressing a grin, Kathy walked away from the house that had once been her sanctuary. She was done with her family. She was done with the manipulation. And she was done with the constant ridicule. She had nothing left to prove. A few days later, as expected, her sister called. As I sat there, holding Muffin in my arms, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The anger, the resentment, it was all finally coming to a head. But what I did next would change everything. One evening, a few days after I left the house, I received a call from Sandy. She was in a panic, her voice trembling with disbelief. Kathy, what happened to the house? She asked, as if the world was falling apart. Why do we have to leave? What's going on? Why are we being told to leave by the end of the month? I let the silence stretch for a moment before I answered with quiet confidence. Well, I've decided to sell the house. There was a long pause before Sandy finally stammered. What? What does that mean? You've decided to sell it? You don't have the authority to do that. I could practically hear her confusion and anger from the other side of the line. Well, I do, I replied coldly. You see, that house has been mine for a month now. What? Sandy exclaimed, her voice rising in shock. How could that be? I didn't know anything about this. I didn't feel the need to explain myself further, but I did it anyway. Yes, I officially received the house from my uncle. The title's in my name. It's no surprise you didn't know. I didn't tell anyone. Sandy was silent, but I could feel her disbelief. You're kidding, right? Even if the title was transferred to you by uncle, you can't just sell it like that. It's not that simple. I was worried too, I admitted, though there was no emotion in my voice, but after you told me to leave, I consulted with uncle. He said, the house is yours now, Kathy. Do what you want. Get away from that stupid family as soon as possible. Sandy's anger was palpable. No way, she muttered, but her words were lost in the growing tension in my mind. I heard my parents in the background, obviously eavesdropping. They began shouting over the phone, trying to control the situation. "Hey, Kathy, cut it out. We have nowhere else to live if you make us leave the house." "That's right. You can't do this to your own family," my father added, his voice thick with desperation. "If you're a good daughter, show some respect to your parents." I felt my patience snap. "Respect?" I asked quietly, the words like daggers. "What are you talking about? You've always looked down on me, compared to Sandy. Who do you think has been supporting your life for the past few years? You all had nowhere to go, so I reluctantly let you live with me. And now you treat me and Muffin like nuisances." My parents fell silent. They had no words left to defend themselves. I didn't give them the chance to speak. "You tried to drive us out, trying to make yourselves happy by kicking out the original residents. It's shameless. You belong to hell." My father's voice cracked with desperation. "Please, Kathy, help us. We're sorry. We'll do anything." "I don't care," I snapped. "Fend for yourselves, you idiots." And with that, I hung up the phone, the sound of the click echoing through my soul. I didn't stop there. I blocked every single family member's contact, knowing I would never hear from them again. I looked down at Muffin, who was gazing up at me with concern. His big, round eyes were full of worry, and it tugged at my heart. "I'm sorry, Muffin, for shouting," I whispered, kneeling down to comfort him. "But it's all right now. I will protect you." I had finally taken control of my life. I didn't have to worry about a toxic family anymore. I had my own little family now, me and Muffin. A few days later, I heard the news. My parents and sister had been forced to leave the house. Despite their desperate pleas and clinging to me, there was no way they could afford to keep up with the house. My father's meager income, combined with my unemployed mother and sister, meant they couldn't support themselves. The rumors began circulating. My sister, once so proud of her position, was now constantly being nagged by my parents to find a job. Her life, like theirs, was spiraling out of control. And the relationship between all of them was only getting worse with each passing day. I wasn't surprised. They got exactly what they deserved, I thought. But I felt no sympathy. I was finally free from their constant judgment, from their manipulation, from their suffocating control. It's true what they say. You reap what you sow. My family had sown years of bitterness, resentment, and manipulation, and now they were reaping the consequences. Though I have no interest in how they live now, it's undeniable that their standard of living has plummeted since I left. I wasn't there to support them anymore, and they couldn't do it themselves. I walked away from the family that had treated me like an afterthought, and I never looked back. They're getting exactly what they deserve, and I've found peace. Serves them right. My family, so consumed with their selfishness, finally got what they deserved. Meanwhile, I'm living a life of fulfillment with Muffin by my side. I moved into a new, pet-friendly apartment, and it feels like a whole new world. There's peace here, no more judgment, no more complaints. I work from home, at my own pace, without anyone breathing down my neck. I can focus on my career without constantly defending my choices. And the best part? No one can tell me what I should or shouldn't do anymore. I can use my earnings however I want. There are no more demands, no more sacrifices to be made for anyone else. It's just me and Muffin, and that's all I need. I feel free for the first time in my life. "Let's go to the dog park today, Muffin," I said, feeling the warmth of the bond we shared. Muffin's ears perked up, and he wagged his little tail so fast I thought it might fall off. "Woof," he responded happily, and it made my heart swell with joy. Maybe it was the absence of that noisy family, or maybe it was just the peace I finally felt in my own space, but Muffin seemed more lively than ever. He was always by my side, a constant source of comfort and happiness. Together, we made the perfect team. The world outside might still be full of chaos, but inside my apartment, there's only love and quiet fulfillment. No drama, no criticism, just me and my little companion, enjoying each moment together. As I watched Muffin chase after a ball in the park, I couldn't help but smile. He had become my anchor, the one thing that grounded me in this chaotic world. I had been through so much, but now, my life was finally mine to live. I promised myself that I would protect Muffin for the rest of my life. No one would ever treat him the way my family had. I would create a peaceful life for us, filled with the love and care that we both deserved. The happiness I feel now is more than I ever expected. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving. From now on, it's all about me and Muffin, making our own happiness and living our best lives, far away from the toxic past.